You're listening to Win-Win, an entrepreneurial community with your host, Ben Wolf.
And welcome to the Win-Win podcast. This is Ben Wolf, as always, your host. I'm happy to introduce today a very exciting episode, which is a big departure from what we have mostly been doing on this podcast for the last few years. A new season. This is about telling one story in the voice of a business owner and the key people that are involved in the story to share their growth story, what things were like before, people who brought in a fractional integrator like Wolf's Edge integrators in this case, and what happened and what's going on and what did they learn? What did they make mistakes? What did they do right? What did we learn from the story? So for this story, it's going to be the story of Pelletier Mechanical Services. And so introducing our guest on this episode today, first is Gaty Pelletier, who's the founder of Pelletier Mechanical Services, which is an HVAC installer and servicer in the Northwest Connecticut area. I'm going to put the link to their website, pelletierms.com, in the description and in the social media. We also have here Ralph Riccio. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. Actually, I realized I might not be. Certified EOS implementer. That's Gary's and Pelletier Mechanical Services implementer. I'm going to include a link to his information on the EOS Worldwide website as well. I also want to introduce my own team member on the Wolf's Edge Integrators team, Tom Hoover, who is who's just an amazing fractional integrator, has served many of our clients, and is the integrator serving on a fractional basis with Pelletier Mechanical Services. And so just happy to have all of you guys here. Welcome.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you
Glad
for
to be
having us.
here. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So let me just get started with like a quick introduction of each of the three of you, right? When I'll call on you one by one, so you don't have to worry or wonder who's going to talk. But just give me a quick, give us, the listeners, the watchers, minute or two background and sort of where you came from and how you got to be, before we even really start the story today, like where you came from, how you got to be where you are today, like what you're doing today. So if you don't mind, Gary, can you go first?
Sure, Ben. Thanks a lot. So a quick background on me. My name's Gaty Pelletier. Our business here is in Thomaston, Connecticut, and it's Pelletier Mechanical Services, Pelletier Heating and Air, same day heating and air by Pelletier. And basically we've developed into a residential heating and air conditioning service provider for homeowners. A little background on me is I went to trade high school for and through some encouragement from my father, picked heating and air conditioning. I don't think I had any clue what heating and air conditioning was when I went to high school. But I've been doing this since 1996. I came out of high school and became a mechanic working for a company installing ductwork and doing plumbing. And then I went to work for a company doing servicing where I do repairs. And I guess deep roots, I'm really a mechanic / technician at heart. And somewhere along the line here, I became a business owner. I think in my father's got some brothers that were builders, and I think deep down inside of me, I always had that entrepreneurial spirit, and I always wanted to be that business owner, contractor type. Anyways, I think in early 2000s, I started working with a friend of mine who was a carpenter, and I went to work with him as a subcontractor. Let's just say everybody that worked for this builder was a subcontractor. So it kind of set me in the direction onto my own business, where I was basically working for one person on the homes he was building, working with his plumber. But I was set up as a 1099 contractor. I had my own work vehicle, and that's where I kind of got started off. And that was in, I say, August of 2004 officially. And here we are now 20 years later in business. So a lot more to tell you today, but that's a little background on me. Real quick, I always like to say I'm 45 years old. I'll be 46 this year. Married, 4 kids, and things are great.
That's awesome. Congratulations. And I love that I love that transition into having your own business. like that's such a smooth way. Like, you had a job. It was almost like a job, but it was on your own also. So it was like a great bridge to the entrepreneurial world. Most people, like with one big client that took up all your time, but like that's just really cool. Ralph, how about you?
Thanks, Ben. Appreciate it. And I'm really happy to be here. Excited to share Gary's story. It really is a story of transformation. So I'm excited about that. So I always blame where I am on my father. My dad and his brother were entrepreneurs. They owned their own business for 37, 38 years, just a stone's throw from where my session room is now. And I watched my dad on the good and the bad days, as I always say. Watched him, come home from work and loved what he did. He owned a retail clothing business and he loved what he did, loved the people the most. The people he worked with, he loved the customers. But I vividly remember the day he came home and told my mom and the rest of the family, I'm the youngest of five kids, told us all that he had to close the store because they couldn't compete anymore. They didn't have the tools and the resources to compete with the big malls that were coming to town in the mid 80s. Gary being a Connecticut guy remembers West Farms Mall and all the things started, and little downtown businesses couldn't compete anymore. And so I took my father's passion for people and leadership and community and really just followed it in my career. I really, like, from the days I was in college to right after college, I was leading groups of people. And I loved every minute of bringing groups of people together, figuring out where we were going and how we are going to get there. And so I've carried that passion through. I've had some great successes, some big wins, and I've had some big losses. But taking a team I had now 15 years ago and taking them from a $90 million in annual revenue, pointing them all in the right direction, getting them all rowing in the same direction, and 36 months later doing about 150 million in revenue.
Wow.
And today they're still using the same. I actually had lunch a few weeks ago with the person who took my seat, still using the same tools and concepts, and they're now at about a $450 million in revenue. And so I finally realized one day I woke up, I'm like, this is where I love to be, is just taking a group of people like Gary's leadership team and like helping them figure out where are they going and how are they going to get there. And so I found EOS about 2.5, 3 years ago, and man, am I home. I'm, loving every minute of it. So yeah, so that's where I'm at. Dad to three stepkids, dad to three dogs. So busy life outside of my EOS life. So
Well, that's awesome. Well, now I feel like I'm only talking about business. I'll just share Ben Wolf, like, 4 kids between 16 and 25, wife, 2.5 dogs. I'll just say because one of our daughters lives outside the house, so she's like coming in and out,
yeah.
when visiting. So that's the half dog. But got 3 Shiba Inus, living in Woodmere, New York, and in Long Island. Anyway, sorry about that. But originally from Nashville, Tennessee. Tom, just originally a
Listen,
Southerner.
us Northerners, we won't hold it against you. You're
Just
fine.
to be clear. Anyway, Tom, how about you?
Yeah, thank you. I'd owned, operated, bought, and sold several companies, and and after I'd sold, our main company, the one that really drove the entrepreneurial spirit in me. I started to help a friend in his business, and he handed me the book Traction. And so, I quickly identified, myself as an integrator, and my friend was very obviously a visionary. And so he said, "Hey, read this book and then tell me what you think." I told him what I thought. He said, "I need help. Would you come help me, build our business?" And so I did, and in less than 4 years, we grew tenfold. I mean, it was just an amazing journey. So I became an absolute true believer in the EOS process. And and after that, I actually became an EOS implementer like Ralph. And I was doing that for a short time and quickly found out that all of my clients actually needed an integrator. They didn't have anybody there to actually integrate the EOS systems into their business. And so I started doing that part time as I was an implementer also. So and when it came down to it, I just decided, man, that was just a better place for me. I'm an integrator at heart. This is what I do. I like to dive into the issues and get a little bit dirty. and as an implementer, you kind of point people in that direction. As an integrator, you get to actually work the pieces and like I said, get a little bit dirty. So a few years ago, I just decided I want to do this full time. And of course, Ben, I met you at one of the EOS conferences and started talking about putting the firm together and helping business owners and helping implementers get more traction from EOS. And it's been a great ride the last few years. And I want to add something to what Gary said. He said somewhere deep down he's an entrepreneur. No, Gary's an entrepreneur. He is through and through. He is a visionary entrepreneur through and through.
100%.
It may have been buried for a little while, but no, he is 100% an entrepreneur. His heart is there, man. That's what he is. It's not deep down anymore. It's out in the open.
Yeah, on his sleeve.
Yeah.
Well, that was awesome. Well, I appreciate you guys giving us a little context for yourselves. I mean, Gary, I want to go with you first, like starting with the actual story now for Pelletier Mechanical Services, which we can never use the abbreviation of because it would just be confusing to people. So
it feels that way some days.
So here, if I could ask you to start telling the story, right? So let's not start with the actual fractional integrator search, but like go back a little before that. What were things like? What was happening? What was going on? Like begin the story there.
Sure. I'll tell you, I got a great EOS story. But if I start a little bit back, when I was in business, I was really just, like you'll hear the term, I owned a job. I was working for myself. I had myself, maybe a couple helpers, and I would do whatever came down the line. I was installing plumbing in new homes. I was doing service calls. I mean, anything that somebody called for. I mean, I put a roof on my grandmother's house and put a sidewalk in her house, painted her house, whatever I had to do to stay busy. But I knew there was more. And I also knew that like if I could be, I guess, more responsive, be available, do a quality job, I would succeed. And I feel like I always had a little bit of a maybe reputation for doing quality work. But I didn't, in my heart, I didn't want to do the work, which sounds messed up. I always felt bad about that. But like I didn't want to be in my truck for the rest of my life. You know what I mean? So I joined, I feel like I joined some coaching groups. I hired a consultant a long time ago that worked in Connecticut, specifically with HVAC guys, kind of taught me my overhead, how to organize my chart of accounts. And then he had a lot to offer, but I couldn't like absorb it all anyways. And I would work with him maybe once a year, twice a year. That gave me, I feel like, a little bit of an edge on the competition, or at least on my business. I joined a group maybe in like 2015-ish, called the School of Entrepreneurship. It's put on by a local contractor here. And basically, it's his model on how to run a contracting business, little bite-sized pieces. And I like that. I got a lot of stuff from it. And I want to say, I also joined a group called Service Business Excellence, which was offered by some of my vendors. And that was basically a business out in Arizona that's really mastered this residential HVAC model. And they would teach me a few things. So I've always had my hands in maybe a little too much, but I'm going to back up just a hair. I think in like 2015-ish, I was part of Connecticut Heating and Cooling Contractors Association here in Connecticut. And I was actually in line to be the president of the association. And we had our annual trade show. And this is how I got involved with EOS. But at the trade show, I said, I'm going to be a good, host and like rub elbows with all the vendors, so I would go around to all the booths and say hello. And one of the vendors was an EOS implementer. Yeah, that was Bernadette Bolton. And I didn't know she was an EOS Bolton. I didn't know she was an EOS implementer or anything about it. I just remember, being friendly, and she's kind of telling me about her stuff, and I don't really, sometimes I'm there, I'm not really listening, but anyway, she's like, I'm going to send you some stuff, and we have some stuff that can help you. So she sent me the book Traction, And whenever, and inside of it has, her literature, her card. And I put it on my shelf in 2015. Okay. And I never picked it up. It's always been sitting there. And I think in like 2021, maybe I went on a trip, and I usually bring a book on the trip just to read. So I'm like, I should take this book and read it. And I'm on the plane, and as I'm reading the book, I'm like, man, this EOS, this traction is just making sense. Like I see myself in there. I see the things that could help my business. I see the regular business person struggles. Um, and I'm like, and I don't have to buy this. I don't think like I have to subscribe to their service. I don't have to become a part of the club like of all these other groups I had become a part of. And I think I read that whole book on that trip. And when we got back, I says, listen, guys, to my team at work, let's try this. And of course, I self-implemented. Just to backstep for a second too, I think when Corona happened, I dropped all of those coaching groups I was part of. You know what I mean? One of them had a pretty hefty yearly charge. Another one had a hefty monthly charge. So I dropped all of those subscriptions and kind of got out of the coaching world. So when we got back, and I remember doing our first implementation, I grabbed a handful of the kind of the key people in my company, and we sat down and we went through it. We had an offsite planning meeting, and it worked. But I noticed doing it myself, I'd run out of gas at the end of the day. And
Mhm.
then I want to say we probably met maybe 3 times. We did our offsite quarterlies, and it started to become more than I could handle. I'd run out of gas. I couldn't really carry
Mm.
things through. I don't know if we were doing our weekly meeting, but we were putting our feet in there. Um, so, I tell you, I've learned a ton about myself over the past few years, and I've also learned that I'm a visionary from Ralph. But and I'll tell you more about that in a minute. But so anyways, I says, you know what? I'm gonna call this lady Bernadette and see if she can help. I've also learned that my personality, I am always trying things myself, and then they usually don't work, and then I'll get professional help. Or I'll chicken out and not get professional help because of the price. So I call Bernadette, and she's kind of telling me like what it costs to run sessions, and I'm thinking, this is a ton of money. But she says, why don't you come down and bring your team, and I'll meet with you and see if I could help you. So when she offered to do that for free, and we also went to her facility, which was a beautiful place, really nice conference room out in the center of Connecticut. I'm thinking, this poor lady, she must have no business, and there must not be nothing going on. She's having us out for free with no obligation. Um, I was like, I'll take what I could get from it, and we'll run with it ourselves. So I think after that meeting, I was like, geez, guys, we got to do this. They want X amount of dollars for a session. Here I am back into paying these consultants the money. But so I kind of committed to her, and she says, well, I really I can't take another client on right now. But let me recommend a new implementer in the area, and that was Ralph. So, took her word for it. And I think we finally ended up having one of our first sessions, and it was like a November, it was
Mm.
late in the year. And Ralph held the session for us off site. And it was a relief to have somebody else run the session for us and kind of guide us. So, again, I feel like
Mhm.
um, self-implementing, jumping in with Ralph, we probably didn't follow the process properly. We kind of, Ralph didn't really know where we were at, and we didn't really know where we were at. But anyways, I think let's just say maybe we did 2 sessions with Ralph, and then we did a 2-day offsite planning, that was a big eye opener. Again, all these steps I'm scared to take. I'm scared to, take 2 days off from work with the team. I'm scared to commit the money. Um, worried about all that stuff. But I think in that 2-day offsite, that's where Ralph started kind of saying, Gary, you're a visionary. And I knew what he meant, and I knew from the book. But that really helped me out a lot. And but I remember, I think one of the rocks, or one of the long-term goals, one of the long-term rocks we put on there was to hire an integrator. And Ralph's like, you need it, Gary. He's like, you got that visionary mind. You're all over the place. new ideas, not putting nothing down and running off to the next idea. And I understood that. And my team complains about that a lot. I'm always off.
All said with love, of course, right? All
Yeah.
said with
Yes.
love.
Great.
That's right.
When we left that session, my wife looked at me and she's like, "You'll never hire an integrator." You know, she was like, "You'll never do that." And I was thinking too, that is just, that was at our, that was one of the things that we'd want to accomplish at the end of the year, right? So that was kind of, I didn't know where we were going to go with it. So, but that session was good. Team building exercises we did. I remember that stuck with me a lot. Just a few little things we did. It was a lot of fun. I learned a lot about the people I was working with. And then I think maybe our first quarterly session that year, again, Ralph's like, "Gary, integrator, man, my team's kind of like, you're always changing your mind. We start something new." And that was a big complaint, especially from my wife. My wife was, she still works for us. But people will talk to her more than they will talk to me. But anyways, I think at that quarterly session, it was like, you got to do this. And to back up a second, I got to say this has helped me personally learn a lot about myself. All right. I'm 45 years old. So this was 44 I was 44 years old last year. And I ended up reading Rocket Fuel and reading more in traction about that visionary integrator. And when I took the test, I'm like, I'm 100% clear. I'm a visionary. And, and when I would look back at like, like I kind of like this business. I like the idea of running a business. I like the idea of being at the head of the business, but like doing the day-to-day work in the business, I'm like, I don't like that. And I felt bad about that. I felt like, maybe there's something wrong with me because I don't want to put the work in, because I got people that work for me that just, they love to work. And I'm just like, man, why am I not like that? But I'm like, I'm a visionary. It's okay.
Own it.
Big ideas. And
So at that, yeah, sorry.
and that's been great for me personally. You know what I mean? To know that there's a place in the universe for me. And I gotta say, off track a little bit, some work we've done at church one time, I was doing service work at a lady's house that I go to church with. And I was finishing up the service call and she says, "Gary, I want to tell you something. I know you're on the deacons board of the church." And she goes, "Our church is right on the main street of our town." And she goes, "We need to do something with that front lawn and we just need to do something with it so people could see us." And right away, like I had the idea of like, she's like, "We should do a revival on the front grass." And like, I could see it, you know what I mean? And I could see it. And I started sharing the idea with my pastor and he says, "Listen, if you want to do it, go ahead and do it." And I realized, I says, I could do this. I can organize it, but I don't want to like be responsible for doing the work. So, I sent out a message to people that I thought would be good team leaders. They all responded and it was great. We kind of did our little mini accountability
chart. Yeah.
And it was good. And I was okay with it. I was okay to say to everybody, like, I could put this together and it went quick. And a lot of the people at the church were like, "We couldn't have done this without you." And really, I don't feel like I did any work. I just kind of held the meetings, put the right people in the right places. And so that was a good little success story. But if I didn't realize that about myself, I probably would have tried to take all the work on and it would have been miserable.
Yeah.
But so anyways, I after our second session last year, our first quarterly session after our planning, Ralph says, "I know some people that can help you with a fractional integrator." You know what I mean? Because again, I said, I'll find somebody myself, but I know myself, you know what I mean? I'm going to struggle in the hire and I'll probably do it, waste 3/4 of a year and then go. So me and Ben had an initial meeting. So Ralph says, this Ben's firm has fractional integration. And, I think when I first talked with you, Ben, I really wasn't sure how you could help. So I didn't do anything. And I also talked to somebody about a fractional sales leader. I was kind of like on the fence. Do I get a sales manager? Do I get an integrator? And I think I let it go to our summer quarterly, our second quarterly session. And again, Ralph's like, "Gare, what's going on here?" And then I think we maybe made it a quarterly rock to hire an integrator. So I got back in touch with Ben. I think I had listened to your book too, Ben. the fractional leadership,
Leadership. Yeah.
which is great. I'm a Audible guy. I listen to books while I drive. That was something I learned at one of my leadership groups years ago. I think I've probably listened to maybe 200 books since 2017, and before that, the
Wow.
last book I read was probably in high school. So that's been a big thing for me. But I just committed to Ben. I says, you know what? I know Ben's the guy. He's wrote the book. I listened to it. That actually helped me out a lot, Ben, to listen to your book because I kind of like knew all the questions to ask, but I'm like, well, you're the guy I'm talking to. Why do I have to ask these questions? But it was good to know what to expect. And and I got to tell you, I had a lot of like negative pressure and adversity from especially my wife. Like, you can't hire someone like this. It's too much money. What are you thinking? You're not going to listen to this person anyways. I was really taking a beating, but I says, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. And I kind of just in a step of faith said, Ben, and it was kind of funny. Ben says we're gonna talk a little bit, and we had a meeting. It seemed a little informal. And then he's like, I'll call you back. We'll have another meeting. And it was funny. Tom was on the meeting, and I'm like, I wonder if this is the guy. And and it just happened to be, I think Tom obviously was the perfect guy for us. I liked that the businesses he ran before were home service related. So I was like, okay, we can I think Tom could relate to us, and here we are today. So yeah, we've been working with Tom. I think Tom came on board with us last July, about right around there. So we're approaching the year. Tom runs our weekly level 10 meetings. He's come in, and I think we've probably had 3 or maybe 4 meetings, including our 2-day offsite this year. And here we are today. So I think that's my quick story of where we're at.
That's awesome. At that point, before you brought Tom on, and then feel free to not answer any part of this question if you want. Where were you then in terms of team size, in terms of revenue, profitability? Where were things, I guess before last July, when before we started working together? Where were those things?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I don't mind sharing about this. I do have to say, I think, what is it? 2021 and 2022 are probably, they were, 2021 was the best year we ever had in business, which is kind of funny, right? I thought we were going to go out of business at the beginning of Corona. And then 2022 again was even better. So again, that was an even better year. And so just to recap, like 2023, I had a few notes here. So looking at 2023 in whole, okay, we were about $4.7 million in revenue. I'm sorry, 2022 was 4.5 million in revenue, all right, which was great. We had about 14 people total in the company. I don't know if I was counting properly, but I kind of looked at it. I didn't look at like at the end of the year how many people were on our W4, but basically at the end of the year, what I thought. All right. And then we ended 2023 at about 4.7 million. So, we were about, $200,000 higher in revenue, and we were at about 20 people. And that was just taking a look at, okay, we had this many people on the payroll that year. Maybe we didn't quite have 20 people, but just to be more accurate.
Mm.
And I have to say right now, I thought, I feel like the goals we set in 2023 are starting to take traction now. You know what I mean? So Tom came on in the middle of 23. Okay. It took us a while to iron out what we wanted to accomplish. I have to say there's kind of a courtship period, where we only meet with Tom so many hours a week. So I'm meeting with him. He's starting to meet with my team leaders. He's starting to implement our meetings. So I feel like there's just that time period where we just got to get to know each other. I wanted to like rush into it and get my money's worth out. I want Tom turning bucks for us, next week. But it took time. But I say we made a goal, and this is probably one of our biggest success stories I'll share. we made a goal to turn our service department around. Just to give you an idea of that $4.7 million, 85% of that comes from what we call our installation team. That's our team out there selling new furnaces and new air conditioners, and then our team installing new furnaces, new air conditioners. And our service team is made up of people that will come out and take care of your equipment. You need your furnace tuned up every year. Those are the people that'll do it. Your furnace breaks down, your air conditioner breaks down, those people do it. And that was 15% of our business. I wasn't concentrating on that. I was using that more as support. And I knew that was a big portion of the business. So we made a plan to that's going to be one of our big rocks, is to turn this service department around. And I feel like we put some things in place that is still evolving and still changing. But here's the success story, okay? Year to date, 2023, our service department brought in about $165,000 of revenue, okay? 2024, year to date, our service department brought in $452,000.
Wow.
So
It's like
math
300%,
wise,
something like
yeah,
that.
273%, okay?
Wow.
And that's actually opened my eyes to how we're doing business and how it's going to change our business. And now I'm starting to see those coaching groups I worked with. They already knew this secret. I just wasn't listening to it. So
What
that's
percentage is that now? What percentage of that now is the service business relative to the new installation piece?
Well, I don't have the numbers in front of you. Just to give you an idea, though, this installation right now is about year to date 1.3 million. So it's still a much bigger piece. But we're probably going to be closer to 75-25, or even, we've actually we've started working with this new service software, and the people that created that service software are basically contractors. And they say, listen, like they see our light bulbs going off. But they said it could be as great as 50-50 when you got this up and running.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And that's recurring revenue, more stable, adds much
Yeah,
more
it's
value.
actually it costs a lot less. It's a lot of work to run the service team. There's a lot of guys doing a lot of things every day, a lot of phone calls. But it's basically just labor, where our installation, a huge portion of that is material costs. So it's very exciting.
Just for clarity's sake, it's about 23% of your overall 1.7 million year to date. So you're definitely seeing that growth, and it's incredible.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let me go before we get into more of the current stuff from the last 11 or 10 or 11 months. I want to hear from Ralph about that time before July 2023, right? But that time before we started working together. As the outsider, as the coach, as the teacher and facilitator, what were you seeing? Like, tell your story tell the story from your perspective. Like, what were you seeing? What was going on? What was working? What wasn't working? I guess what set the table for like what led to this fractional integrator sort of recommendation that
Yeah.
that you initiated. But what was the story? What was going on before that? What were you seeing?
Yeah, I mean, Gary did a really great job of talking to it. True visionary of lots of ideas. As Gary is describing his offsites, and in the first meeting, I said, "Hey, Gary, send me your tools, right?" And I want to just take a look at your accountability chart, your issues list. Everything was handwritten, scanned into the computer. And his accountability chart, I mean, he had like trucks drawn for service and trucks drawn. I mean, it was homegrown. It was
I
just
love
like
that.
all of his heart was into the whole thing. And they did a great job of trying to get there and get it right. I think the biggest challenge was like that I could see was the, do we have the right people in the right seats? Gary made some shifts in his leadership change. He brought somebody in who he thought was going to be a great ops person for him, and then realized that he was really more of a hands dirty kind of person, right? Like he needed to be more in the business and wasn't at that leadership seat. And so made some of those changes, but it was, we'd have a check-in call, and I think Gary would be like, well, what about this? And what about that? And I think we're going to talk to the Service Titan guys, and maybe we're going to do that coaching. And, it was lots of ideas, and you could see the light bulb. I mean, Gary, I think one of the greatest things about Gary is that he's so humble. I mean, we talk about it all the time, humbly confident, right? The ability to be open, honest, and vulnerable. And Gary, he says it like, I know what I don't know, and I know what I know. And he was always willing to hear whatever it was that, whatever the feedback was and where he could go. I knew it had to sit for a while with him to let it kind of make its way through. And then Gary, like, then he gets it, and it, takes time. He wants to try it himself and do all the things. And so I was seeing all of that happening, and some traction was starting to happen, but I also saw frustration in that they weren't getting as many of the rocks done that they wanted to get done. And right. And it was driving the accountability and all of the different things. And I think it was just, Gary said, it was a multitude of conversations at our quarterlies. It was during our check-ins of like, so what do you think? Do you need somebody who's going to help, harmonize that team, make sure they're doing the things it's hard for a visionary to do. And so we just had those conversations, and I saw it chipping away slowly but surely of, yeah, I think maybe. And I remember that first initial call, and I think we need a sales leader. I think we need an integrator. And then I introduced him to a fractional sales leader, and then you, and he was like, I don't know, I'm not sure. Right. Like let it settle in. And then he finally realized, and I think 100% right, that Tom was the guy, right? Like when you introduced Tom as like, he's got experience in the home building space and, in the trades like that, I think was when the real light bulb was like, yeah, I think this is going to help. So, I mean, I was seeing all the things. I mean, they were making progress, but I knew in Gary's heart, and Gary, correct me if I'm wrong, he wanted it more, better, faster. And it was just really the identification that having this integrator seat filled was what was going to be that catalyst. That, again, that's why we call it rocket fuel over and over and over again, right? Is that was going to be the catalyst for him.
And what were you seeing? Like, why is it that without someone like Tom, someone like a fractional integrator or a great integrator, why is it that without that, you're just hitting the ceiling? Like it's frustrating. It's trying again and again, but not quite getting there. Like, Ralph, what are you, as an outsider, what were you seeing? And obviously you have other clients also where I'm sure you see similar issues.
Yeah, sure. It's a lot of that visionary stuff of like, well, there's a new idea, there's a new book, right? And it's somebody to hold the feet to the fire and say, okay, Gary, great idea, but right, somebody to hold that accountability for the visionary and stop and be that filter of ideas. Hey, that's a great idea, but we're going to tuck that over here on the long-term issues list, and we might get to it someday. Gary talked about his background in plumbing and HVAC and all the things, and there was a point in time, and that somebody, I think, reached out to Gary and said, "Hey, you want to buy a plumbing business?" And I know Gary, because he is a true blue entrepreneur.
Yep.
He really thought about maybe we should do plumbing and HVAC, right? But he needed somebody who could say, Gary, is that what we do? Is that our core focus? And luckily he's got a team that's also very vocal about that. And they're like, yeah, no, we don't do that. We do HVAC, right? And so I was seeing I mean, honestly, textbook visionary is what I was seeing. And so knowing that somebody needed to step into that seat, I think honestly, I've been blown away at it's a fractional person that's helping to drive the impact at the level that it's happening at this point. I mean, it's been fantastic to watch. So
I appreciate it. Well, Tom, I've been holding you off until now, but like I'd love to hear from you. Like when you first met Gary, when you started coming into contact with this company, or when you first started, like tell the story from your experience. Like what were you seeing? What did you observe? What did you feel? What happened at the beginning?
I want to hear about the courtship, really.
Yeah. Well, people that know me know like I'm pretty plain and pretty blunt. And so, as far as the courtship goes, I think it's like, hey, I like you. Do you like me? Let's get together. Unfortunately, that's what, my wife had the same experience with me. So that's kind of how I am. But, with Gary, it's just very, like Ralph said it. He's definitely a visionary. And I said it earlier, he's 100% entrepreneur. And the difference with Gary is that, there's a lot of entrepreneurs out there, right? There's tons of entrepreneurs, there's tons of small business owners, but there's not a lot of people that can grow a company to, several $1 million without actually having all the quote unquote right cogs in place to do it. While sitting in almost every seat in the company, he's able to grow this company to this level. And it's because of his commitment to all the coaching and listening to new ideas and having, other people on his team that he's willing to bring along and do those. So when I've met Gary, I found this guy that already had almost all the ideas. They were all right there. He just didn't have the right cogs in place to implement them, to integrate them. I guess that's the word I should be using, right? And because he was sitting in too many seats and trying to do an awful lot of it himself, which, as he stated, that's frustrating to him because he has the vision, but whenever you have to do everything, it gets very, very frustrating. Mm-hmm. So being able to step into a place where you have a guy that's very, very open to all these new ideas, and he actually has most of the information already. He just needed someone to kind of, help him and his team get pointed in the right direction. And like Ralph says, we're all rowing in the same direction now. We're all pointed toward the same target, and just keep them focused. And the other great thing that he had done, his leadership team, they're just good people. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's already created this culture and brought on people who actually care about the business and care mm-hmm. about their clients and care about each other. So a lot of these culture things that you end up fighting, in a lot of companies, he didn't have those things. So, he was primed and ready to have this greater level of success that he's been talking about. And all we needed was someone just to come in and we call it herding cats sometimes. And it's to be funny, but there's a little bit of truth to that because everybody's kind of just, swirling all over the place. And, but because of the culture that he already established and the knowledge that he already knew what it was supposed to look like. He just having the tools in place to get him from here to there. That was the only thing that that he needed. So being able to come in and having the service-based background, and we'd said something about this earlier, but I always come in with the ideas that visionaries aren't someone to be tolerated; they're someone to be appreciated. So when we can appreciate that vision, and you take that knowledge, he says, "This is what it's supposed to look like," but we're here. But he knows that, and you say, "Okay, let's put these tools in place to connect us from here to there." And he's like, "Yeah. Let's do that." And he's just on board with it. He makes it very, very easy to do that. So through that courtship, it was he said it took a long time. That's because it didn't happen, in a snap, right? But we quickly identified the service department in that first quarter. I mean, I'm looking at the service department and he's like, "It should be this." And we're here. And I'm like, and I agree. I said, with a few simple, modifications, we can quickly get to that. And within, I think it was a month or two, Gary, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I have to go back and look at my notes, but we had made that jump, from where he was to where he's at today, because, I was looking at some of the time frames, it was anywhere from 4 or 5 fold to 10-fold, depending on which segment of time we're looking at. Is working, his search department, the revenue wave was just out all over the place. And now it still has some wave, obviously, but it's so much more consistent at a higher level. And, it's all because of, he already knew what it was supposed to look like. And all he needed someone to do was connect the dots and help his team connect the dots. And, when I came in and he already had everything set up to be successful, I just had to help them get there, which, of course, that's what integrators do, right? This is what we do.
Yeah,
so
Tom,
it was an easy, quick,
I...
fast experience. And and this year, and I told him, because we just saw it the other day, we saw the first time ever a completely green, and for people that don't know, a green scorecard, all the numbers were on target, every single one of them, even the ones that are in line to stretch goals. We're awesome. Like, oh, finally, because we've always had, this one, it was always a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And I'm going into the summer, which is their peak season, right? This is going to be, we're getting ready to have a really good year. I mean, a really good year. We've talked about service, but that's, now we're going to have to work on service some more, because in order to keep our percentage up of service, because sales is getting ready to go off the charts. And whenever it does, we're going to have to do something with service to if we want to stay above that 25% mold or get to 50-50, we're gonna work on it some more too. I mean, it's going to be a pretty exciting year, and it looks really, really good right now.
Yeah.
Ralph, what were you going to say?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there, but Tom, you said it so well. It was all the pieces were there. It was just the cogs were off, right? And all you needed to do was as an integrator, the integrator stepped in and helped align those cogs so everything could move. I mean, like you said it so well. Gary set so much of it up already in doing all the research with all of the with again Service Titan and all of the different coaching and the getting your account of charts, your chart of accounts all aligned. I mean, all the things that you did. But as that visionary, this alignment is probably one of the toughest spots. I see it all the time.
And he's trying to sit in 18 seats because he's so 100%. Passionate about his business.
Yeah.
You know, he's so good, and he knows every seat thoroughly. And, you know, to get him to let his team do some of that for him, get him out of some of those seats and let him focus on what he's really good at, you know, getting him to take his alone time, you know, let's go and have this time where you can sit and think and do what you're supposed to do so that you can focus your mind on the business and get some more of that vision of what it's really supposed to look like, and let us do some of the work. And, you know, like I said, he'd already created such a good culture, and we do have one specific person on the leadership team. Of course, they've all grown tremendously in the last year. I mean, it's very, very impressive how much they've grown this year. But there's one lady on his team that the only person that doubted her in the room was her.
Oh, there's about to be magic there, and then he froze on us.
See it, and we pointed it out in our last quarterly. Ralph, you were there. I mean, I was talking to her. I said, the only person that's doubting what you're going to do this quarter is you. And Gary backed me up, and she is nailing her rock, and it was to grow the contact center. She's growing it like fourfold or whatever, and bringing in people and training them. And this is all a little bit new to her, and you're having a higher leadership level, and she's just absolutely rocking it. I mean, she's killing it. And the only person in the room that doubted that was going to happen was her. But she, you know, having the support of Gary and of course the whole team, and me telling her every week in our one-on-ones, you're going to do this. This is going to be perfect. You've already done it over here with this little thing. You just got to do it just instead of one person at a time. It's going to be, you know, 4 at a time. And she did. She's just doing such a wonderful job. And the whole team has really just stepped up their game. It's been really, really impressive to see.
It is a real, I mean, it's such a success story of the critical importance of having an integrator and the right integrator in place.
And they're getting ready to really reap those benefits. I mean, this year, and I see it. I think Gary sees it too. But I see it. And this summer, when the busy season really comes on, we're getting ready to have maybe we should have this conversation at the end of the year, Ben, because this is going to be a great year for Pelletier. It really is.
I mean, the work you've done when I think Gary, you said it, you know, it'll be a year for Tom in an integrator role within Pelletier. I mean, it feels like the amount of things that have been accomplished in the last less than a year is tremendous for this organization. To me, Tom, you've been here two years at least, right? Working with Gary side by side in the trenches, and it's not even been a year yet. And what the alignment of the cogs, what you've done to take all of the things that Gary had and bring them all together, rocket fuel. I mean, I'll say it over and over again.
Right. Well, I make the joke all the time that they're going to do all the work and I'm going to take all the credit.
Yeah.
But hopefully what I've been saying is the opposite of that, because it really is. And like I said, Gary's willingness and openness to see it and go, yes. And then we say, hey, this new software, hey, this program, something like that. If we do this, the long-term benefits is this, and this. And he sees it, and he sees it very quickly. And, you know, the things that he also sees that are like that, he go, well, maybe this is not the right time. Maybe we're not quite there yet. He also backs off of that. He's very willing to put a pin in things or just eliminate things when he sees it. This, you know, like the plumbing business we were talking about, you know, this is not our niche. This is not our core focus. And this is not part of our big, you know, hairy, audacious goal. Let's just put that off to the side. We don't need that. And, you know, he's very, very willing and open to make a call and make an investment when he needs to, and he sees the ROI coming. and he's very, very willing to push things away when he says that's not going to benefit us the way we want it to, and we can better spend our energy over here. And to have that as the leader, I mean, whenever he's able to take those things and make those decisions and be very comfortable with it. I mean, this is part of the reason why we are doing what we're doing with Pelletier is because of that. Because, we attacked the service department pretty quickly, Gary. We saw that. He said, I want to see a return on my investment. So I immediately did too. I was like, well, the low hanging fruit's the service department. I know we can increase that revenue, real quick. And, but his willingness to also say, well, let's use the software program to help our service techs do this, this, and this. And it provides quotes and does all these things. And, it's an investment. Software is not cheap, right? And all these things that we do aren't cheap. But Gary saw it and he said, if we do this, this will increase our revenue this much. It'll pay for the software tenfold, more than worth our time. And it has. I mean, it's been, we were already going up like, I think threefold. I can't remember, but the revenue for service was already increasing. Then whenever he found this software, he said, we can implement this too, and it'll just make it. And this is where we took the focus on service and then added this accelerant to it, and it just boom, it just took off. And that was because of his willingness to make that investment. Yeah. And you know what? His profit, might be not what we want it to be at the beginning of this year, but at the end of the year, after all these initial investments, it's paying off for him. And I mean, we see it coming. We certainly do.
That's awesome. And I want to get Ralph's version of this story too, because he referenced it a second ago. But Gary, I'd like to hear from you. Let's talk about during this engagement now, since July. What happened? What's been accomplished? Like, what are the things that have happened, and what do and why do you think that worked since that time when Tom started as fractional integrator?
Oh, let's see here. I did take a couple notes today ahead of time.
Yay. My visionary is taking notes and being prepared. I love it. I love it.
So I got to say, with Tom coming in, I always say, like, he brought organization to the company. He has high level leadership that we don't have. He's doing one-on-one coaching with my team leaders. And we just call it our weekly check-ins. And he's doing that team leader development. That's all stuff that I've always been, I haven't been good at, you know what I mean? Taking the time to meet, set some goals. So for Tom to do that with each one of my people, it's a relief to me. And it's also a relief because I know they're getting professional coaching, not that it's coaching, but it's internal. Also I say, Tom runs our weekly L10s. And then that was also very refreshing too, to not, cause I was running them, to sit back and let somebody else run the meeting, and especially an experienced person to run the meeting has been great. He keeps us focused, right? We used to get quite off track. Tom's been a professional resource for us. You know what I mean? I now in my brain, my you got the book behind you, Who Not How. My first thing is always like, how can I do this? And so what I'll usually say is, I'll ask Tom, and he'll give me some clear advice, which is really good. And it's nice to have Tom as a resource with us. And again, the professional development for our people has been great. I got to say that's and some of the key things we've accomplished over, I think, like some of the rocks we've set. We've made some key hires. We hired an outside salesperson, but with us planning for it, setting it up, figuring out how we're going to onboard the person, we've converted one of our service techs into a service manager, with Tom's help. And then, like he was saying before too, like we decided that we want to develop a call center here at our work. So we actually had one of our team leaders take that on as a rock, and with Tom's help, it's coming to fruit right now. We just hired our second person to work in the center. So that's really big. You know what I mean? That was some big things right there. So yeah.
That's awesome. And Ralph, I'll ask you too. Like again, you're kind of the outsider. You help bring us in, but then you've been seeing them quarterly. I want to ask about the sessions too in a minute, but first I want to get to something you said a minute ago, which was that, you've just seen, it's amazing how many things were accomplished in the last, 9, 11 months, whatever it is. What have you seen accomplished? What have you seen change since then?
I think there's been so much, Gary said just a second ago, I think like we were getting distracted and Tom just keeps everybody laser focused, right? We talk about what does done look like in our sessions for their rocks and like it's what, not how are you going to get there? And Tom has really been able to go in and help them figure out how they're going to get there, right? And Tom's experience in the room, both in the industry as an implementer, as an integrator, has also really helped to say, what are the most realistic things? Can we really truly get that done? Right. The culture that Gary has built, as Tom said, is really incredible because the passion of those people, if you asked each one of them, they're probably not sitting at that table because they are absolutely passionate about HVAC. They love the culture and they love Gary and they want to succeed for Gary, right? And so if he thought an idea and they said, okay, well, we're going to figure out how to make that happen, they were going to give their all. But the how of it sometimes got a little tough to do. And I would say Tom's really helped to sort of dig deep into that how the things are getting done, the milestones on those rocks. And just watching the team evolve as well. I think with that one-to-one coaching that they were getting, I'm going to challenge, Gary, that I'm, not, I think I forgot how you said it, but Tom is a totally higher level of leadership, but it's just a very different leadership. You are a leader, right? People follow you. Think about the story you told about your church, right? You put out an email and people got on board, and your team did the same exact thing. And they just needed somebody to line those cogs up. And that's really where such a great analogy. I'm going to steal it, Tom, just so you know, I'll be using that quite frequently. The cogs in the wheel. And so it really is what they needed to come together. And he's stepped in just in the conversations, watching him in session in particular. I know we'll get more into that, but watching him in session and really digging in because he's in the weeds of the business that I'm not, right? So I can ask the questions to get it out of their heads, but he's going to ask a deeper question and hold people accountable to that. And as a visionary, that's sometimes the hardest job as a visionary leader, is to really hold that accountability for fear of breaking culture, et cetera. And so Tom is able to take that balance and really hold those folks accountable and watching that happen and cheering them on from the sidelines. And he's got their back. He's pushing them up and Gary can push them up now too. And Tom's pushing them up with some more tools and resources.
That's awesome. Let me ask you this specifically, not just about Pelletier, like Pelletier's story, but from your perspective as an EOS implementer, what do you see as the difference working with, an experienced fractional integrator like Tom versus what it was like before, or versus, maybe other clients where they don't have someone like Tom? What is the difference that you see, I guess, as an implementer and in the session room?
Wow, I mean, I have one client that just jumps out at me, a couple of them really. The differentiator of having an experienced integrator in the room, in the business versus not chaos. It's chaos, right? And I wouldn't say Gary before having an integrator was chaotic. I mean, Gary did a great job at learning how to be the best possible integrator a visionary can be, right? But in a particular client I have, I mean, there's an absolute true visionary in the organization, and without the integrator, I mean, there's been no progress. There's no progress in the session room. There's no progress in the business. There's just constant frustration. And so it's so night and day. There are implementers out there who I know will say, hey, if you don't have an integrator, we're probably not going to be the right fit to work together. I didn't understand that 2.5 years ago. I get it today. I get it really well today because it's such a critical piece to the success of an organization because they're such distinct individuals, right? Now I have one company there is no visionary. There is a true integrator at that seat, at that helm. That's okay, because they are making sure that every piece of the business is running. The team comes together as that visionary. They set that vision. You can have that, but to have a visionary and no integrator, it's really difficult for a business to really break through the ceiling. They will hit it, and they're going to hit it hard. And that's my fear for a couple of clients that I have. And I'm trying that slow but persistent conversations like I had with Gary of, this is going to have an impact. This is going to have an impact. And the true benefit of a fractional, and from my opinion, is it's a great test. It's a great test to see what's possible on a fractional basis. Imagine what's possible if and when the company is ready and in a position to put somebody in that seat full time.
Can you describe a drop more about that chaos that exists and that you see when people, maybe the visionary is trying their hand to the integrator seat, or they have a weak person, in that seat?
Yeah.
What is that like? What does that look like, so that people could see themselves in it? That's really why I'm asking. What does that look like?
Sure.
What are people seeing and feeling there?
There's not a lot of accountability, right? Rock completion is very low, if at all. I had a client recently, I think they were at 17% completion. There's no true integrator in the business. And so they were at 17%, and they're about 18 months on their EOS journey, and they came in here, 17%. There's a lack of commitment to the process, right? Oh yeah, I read traction, or I've heard of traction, and yeah, we need this, but the commitment and the accountability, I think, are the biggest things that fall apart. And so they're going to feel the chaos in the terms of the right people, right seat isn't happening. You've got somebody who just doesn't fit the culture, but they're killing at their sales, and so they're going to let them go.
Yeah.
But what's happening is all the other people are leaving the organization, and they're incredibly frustrated because that's what's tolerated. And we say it all the time, tell my clients all the time, what you tolerate is what you get, right?
Yeah.
And so you're gonna create this culture of complete distrust because you're allowing that to continue, because of a true visionary doesn't have it's just not innate in them to hold that accountability for people of, hey, you don't fit this culture, right? Or holding the leadership team accountable to hold their people accountable. And so you're seeing it in so many different ways, from people to rocks to, are we solving any issues, right? I've got one client that does not have an integrator, and they're really struggling there. Well, we're still doing our level 10s, but they've now on the verge of missing a second quarterly. But what rocks are you doing? What are you setting for your targets, right? They're not doing anything.
Right.
Maybe they're holding a level 10, but they're not checking in on their rocks. Likely they're not using a scorecard anymore. And are they really digging down to the root cause of issues and solving those? They're not, right? And so you're seeing it in every area of the business that nothing's firing. And it really, what they're seeing, if somebody's trying to understand, am I in this position where, yeah, maybe we're running on EOS, but we don't have a great integrator in place, what you're going to see is what you always saw. It's going to be much of the same, right? It's just much of the same things that's happening, maybe a little bit more organized. Maybe it all looks pretty in a software package that, you're using to support your EOS journey, but you're not really getting to the root cause of the issues. You're still putting band-aids and duct tape and twine around everything, and feeling the same anxiety that you've felt for years, and why you called somebody like me in. But there's no progress.
Right.
So,
Well, let me ask Gary, like, one of the things, switching gears a little bit, what's your biggest hope? Like, what's your biggest hope in growing this business? Like, in whatever you want to do with Pelletier Mechanical Services. Like, some people want to have great valuation and great exit. Some people want to just have like freedom from the day to day, or just like the feeling of accomplishment of having and growing a business, or, just 10x, whatever it is. Like, what is it that kind of wakes you up about this business? What is your like biggest hope or dream or aspiration or pleasure from this business?
That's a good question. I did write an answer down to it, but I got to say, over the years, I just said to myself, like last week, I'm like, I've been running this company for 20 years. Um, you know, maybe I should let somebody else run it. So I'm really not sure. I've heard the concepts out there. We got, basically we got lifestyle support businesses. We got businesses you build to sell, and then we got businesses you succeed to your family or whatnot. And I've never really thought about that, but I'm definitely running a lifestyle support business. So I always say, I think really what I would like to do is I don't want to sell this business, and I don't think it's become too valuable to just give to my kids. But I would like to, have this business run with minimal input from myself, to maybe see it with a, full-time integrator, general manager running this business successfully and profitably, you know what I mean, with minimal input from myself, possibly. I don't know what I would do with myself from there, but I think that's what I see myself doing.
I mean, you mentioned before, stuff with family. You mentioned projects with church. You mentioned investing. I mean, there's, if you had that freedom, and the resources, I mean, there's, literally a lot of ways that you can channel that visionary energy. But let me ask we have all three of you as a last question. Maybe starting with Tom and then Ralph and then Gary. What's your, like, from this experience working together and bringing on a fractional integrator and the growth that you've had or the improvements that you've had, what's your main takeaway? Like, what's your, when you're reflecting on everything that's happened over this past year, what's your main takeaway that you think you'd like other business owners to understand? We go Tom, Ralph, and then Gary.
Is being clearer about the end game that you're actually looking for. And for Gary personally, he may have a little bit of fuzziness on that, but with his company, he really knew where he wanted it to go, and he really was working hard. Like I said, he's been running this business for nearly 20 years now, and to get to the level he's at, doing it the way that you run a small business. He's heading into this mid-sized business range, and he's still running like a small business, and to be able to accomplish that goal, I mean, there's a lot to be said there because most people can't do that. But to have a bigger vision and the willingness to say, I've been doing it this way for a long time, and to still be willing to say, but what got me here won't get me there. The classic business term, right? And to be willing to say that and be open to it and do it. I mean, this is something that I've really keyed in on because he's one of the best I've ever seen with that attitude. And because he's listened to my ideas and let me do some things. I'm like, I'm gonna have to talk Gary into this, and I to kind of tell him what I'm thinking. He's like, yeah, that sounds good. Let's do that. And okay, I don't really have anything else to talk about in our meeting today. I thought this was going to be so to looking for that attitude, for that mental state that he's in. That yeah, he's been doing this for 20 years, but yeah, I'm still going to do things different because I want something different from my business. And his willingness to do that, that was something, man, I've really cued in on, and I'm looking for it with everybody that we talk to. With Wolf's Edge now, all of our potential clients. It's an attitude that I'm looking for is people's willingness to say, I still don't know everything, and I'm willing to say that there are better ways to do things, and I'm willing to do them in order to get what it is we say we want. And
Right.
It's just been absolutely key for us.
Right. So have that destination or that outcome in mind, and then be really open to whatever it actually takes to get there, because it's not always either what you initially think or what you did before that's actually going to get you there. So open-mindedness to that. Ralph,
Yeah.
what about you? What's your main takeaways from this experience?
Ben, that wasn't fair to put me behind Tom with that kind of question, because that was such a spot on answer. I mean, it really, there's so many takeaways, honestly, but this journey with Gary and his team has been really phenomenal. And that humility is, I think, really, truly what has driven it. I mean, if I'm being really honest, I mean, Gary's openness to learning something new, learning lots of new things, openness to saying, okay, yeah, maybe I need a fractional sales leader. Okay, maybe I need a fractional integrator, and really exploring it and understanding it for him and what makes the most sense because of his ability to be so humble and knowing what he knows and knowing what he doesn't know. I think has been an absolute game changer And I think if people take that away, and it's exactly what I look for in my clients is, if I'm talking to somebody, if there's that air of arrogance that they just like, I know a little bit better, or yeah, we're going to do EOS, but we're going to do it a little bit differently. No, EOS works for a reason, right? And we talk about this integrator role for a critical reason of importance and why it's such an important component to the organization. I don't want to work with that client because I want people who are hungry, humble, smart, ready to go and dive all in. And so that humility and then it's just it's been a game changer for this organization. And I mean, Gary, kudos to you. It has been an absolutely joyful ride that I can't believe we're almost at your 2-year mark here. And I've loved getting to know him, the evolution in your people, putting the right people in the right seats. Tom talked about, that the one person on Gary's leadership team. I mean, talk about blossoming into and it's not just her work life. The impact has brought in farther out as well, right, to the rest of her life. And so it's been an incredible thing to watch. Gary's on the move.
That's
Sorry, I'm on a
awesome.
meeting.
Yeah, so it's that the key for making maximum benefit of a fractional integrator, of their EOS implementation and their implementer, is that humility, willingness to grow and learn is going to be the key to success. That's one big takeaway I'm hearing.
Yeah,
Gary,
absolutely.
Gary, what about you? What's your big takeaway from, or biggest takeaway or ways from this experience this past year?
So I got to say, for a person like me, I needed this because I didn't know how to do this myself, and I might have been too big of a task to try myself. So, um, oh, what could I say here to, the service that your company provides, Ben, you know what I mean? And then, and Tom, you being available to do this, this is the step that I needed to take to, I think, get to where I don't know where I want to go yet. You know what I mean? It's going to help me there. Like I could see it. I picture, this is a fractional step in our journey. You know what I mean? I hope at the end of this, Tom's going to help us hire our full-time integrator general manager. You know what I mean? And I know like he's the guy that's going to be able to do this for me, or at least help us do it, because again, it's something that's probably bigger than me. Um, and the whole thing's been great. Like I think of when I do think of my team, I think of Tom and I think of Ralph. You know what I mean? I say, those, even though I don't see these guys every day, they're major parts of my team, and like I just interviewed a guy the other day and I says, listen, we have a fractional integrator general manager, you know what I mean? And, I run all these things by him first, and it's been a great step. It's been a great service for me, for my business. I wish I learned this sooner. But everything happens in the time that it's supposed to happen in.
Right. And well, last question also for you, Gary. If annualized, if you don't mind sharing, approximately where your revenue is now, your team size, profitability now.
Yeah, let's just say, so the profitability is still a little elusive. We're spending a lot of money growing, you know what I mean? We're spending money on
Investments, a lot of
software,
investment.
spending money on our call center. We're taking a serious look at expenses. But we are slightly off track on our financial goals this year. Like I said, we're at about well, here's a good thing. We're at 1.77 million year to date today. Last year, same time, we were at 1.59. So we do have some growth. And I do feel that business isn't coming in as well as it was in the past 2 years. We're working harder for it. But I think this year our profitability is going to be great. You know what I mean? It's really going to be a lot better than it was. So, we're on track for some growth this year. Hopefully to where we've set our goal at. We're hoping to turn 6 million this year. So we've been off track, with our first quarter. But I think our profitability, and also I don't want to say a new direction, but we've discovered a new profit center in our business. So it'll be good.
All right. That's awesome.
Keeping me hanging. I like it.
Yeah.
Keeping me curious.
It's yeah, and
it's going to be a great year. It's going to be a great
Awesome.
year.
A lot of, it sounds like some of it's also setting the table for the future, for future growth. And, so that there's a time of investment, and then there's a time of building the foundation. Then there's a time of building the house on top of it. Right. Which is we're, get some of the house, but you're going to have even more of the house in future years. But look, Gary, Tom, Ralph, very, very grateful to the three of you for making the time and coordinating schedules to get all of us together at the same time. Just super, super grateful for all of you for that. My hope, prayer is that anybody listening to or watching this, that business owners can see this, hear this story, implementers can hear the story, business owners can hear the story, and just kind of like see from all these different angles, kind of what this looks like, what it feels like, how it works, what was before, what's after, what's during, and be able to judge, hey, is this something that would be relevant to us too? And I think it all seems very theoretical when you read, marketing websites or blog articles, but to hear a story from real people, real business owners, I think is key. Something people really, really need and want to see and hear. So I appreciate you guys making the time.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you
Thank
for
you,
pulling
Ben.
together, Ben. Really appreciate it. It's a great story to tell.
Yeah, that's awesome. And again, thank you for making the time. Thank you for speaking and sharing. And everybody else, we'll see you on the other side. Thank you.
You're listening to Win Win, an entrepreneurial community with your host, Ben Wolf.